with a question on Brexit and whether the UK would leave by October the 31st.
In the end, we are in a room with a door, and the door is called Parliament. And I'm the only person here trying to find the key to the door. Everybody else is staring at the wall, shouting, "Believe in Britain."
But we've run into that door 3 times already, Rory. But we've got to have a different route out. We can't simply represent the same cold porridge for a 4th time and ask people to say that that's what they want. We need to have a different approach. Now, where I think you are right and realistic is that if you have an arbitrary date, and we get so close, Emily, to being able to get the line over, I think that the view that Boris and Serge have articulated, which is, do you know what, we'll just rip up all the progress we've made and go out without a deal.
It's not an arbitrary date, it is October the 31st. So when is your last leaving date?
Well, I've argued that we should leave at the earliest possible opportunity, and I believe the most important thing as the first person
what does that
in
mean?
this group.
Will it be 2019?
No, well, yeah, absolutely 2019. And I think that we can do that. I think we can do that because we can make progress and we can ensure that we're in a position to leave. But the worry I have about Boris's position, we fought together on the Leave campaign. Boris joined me on that campaign, so we both believe it in our heart. But my worry is that, Boris, if we got to October the 31st and we were so close to getting that deal over the line, would you at that point say, Michael, we're almost there.
I share Michael's. October the 31st. Can you give me that guarantee?
Michael was guaranteeing to get out by the end of December. I think that October the 31st is eminently feasible.
No, that's not a guarantee. Is that your date?
And let me just say that if we now say that we have a deadline that is not a deadline, and we allow October the 31st to come and go as March came and went and April came and went, I think the public will look upon us with increasing mystification. And we will continue to hemorrhage support.
Anyone on the stage guarantee it yet? Can you just raise your hand if there is a guarantee to leave by October the 31st? Just raise your hand if you can guarantee that.
Let me just ask you this question. Okay, so I would agree with you. If the only way we can leave is without a deal, then I would do that. But what would you say to a sheep farmer that I met in Shropshire recently, whose business would be destroyed by 40% tariffs on lamb? Now, if you were just before the 31st of October and there was a deal in sight, but you gave up and you said, no, this is a hard deadline, we're out, he would look at you and he'd say, Boris, you got your dream, you went to number 10, but you've destroyed my dream, which is a family business.
Of course, and nobody, Jeremy, wants a no deal, a disorderly no deal of that kind. But it is important to prepare for no deal. I congratulate what you and Michael and others have done to prepare for no deal. I think actually, Emily, there's a wide measure of consensus that we must get out on October the 31st. We must prepare for no deal.
How?
And that is the way.
Yes.
That is the way that we will get the deal that we need. And the way to come out is not with a disorderly Brexit, but with what everybody understands, taking the solution of the Irish border issues, putting that into the implementation period after we have come out.
There is no solution without the backstop.
Of course, no, that's not true at all. Everybody understands the solutions.
You do need to have a deadline. You absolutely need to have a deadline, because without that, you won't focus minds. When anyone who's negotiated anything, they know you need to have a deadline. Okay. And in terms of what we can get through that door, as Rory called it, what we can get through the door is what's already gone through the door, which is the withdrawal agreement with a change to the backstop. This is the only credible plan, and it can be done.
Brexit, the big talking point this evening. Let's go straight to our chief political correspondent, Vicky Young, who's here at the BBC where the debate took place. Vicky.
That's right, and all the teams had their supporters here watching what was going on and willing to give their assessment. I'm joined now by Nicky Morgan, who is backing Michael Gove. What did you make of the performance generally about Brexit? I'm still not entirely clear what each candidate wants out of all of this. There's a lot of discussion about when, we leave the EU, but not much detail about how. What is Michael Gove's position on that?
Well, actually, I think Michael was the one person who cut through the noise of the contenders and actually set out a very clear three-point plan, obviously restoring power sharing to Northern Ireland, putting a full stop on the backstop, as he says, and making sure that actually there is a deal that can be delivered and voted on and approved by the House of Commons. You know, everyone else is that there was a lot of noise, and I think that he had some serious answers to serious questions.
But he's still going to have the same problem that Theresa May had. It's a hung parliament. Not everyone is across that agreement, and there's no guarantee that the EU are going to agree to any changes to the backstop.
Well, of course, there's obviously no guarantees, but actually having a serious plan and actually really taking personal charge, as Michael has committed to do, of restoring power, the devolved assembly in Northern Ireland is incredibly important. He talked about his links with the Irish government, with politicians in Northern Ireland as well, and I think that was very much a missing part. And it's not possible to solve this. He committed obviously to protecting the peace process under the Good Friday Agreement as well. But it was just very noticeable that in the debate there was a lot of noise from other contenders. It was Michael who actually had the space to set out, what he wanted to do about this.
But he can't guarantee we leave at the end of October. He couldn't really say when. He suggested maybe by the end of the year, but he can't guarantee that, can he? And we heard from some of the questioners, some of them who have basically defected to the Brexit Party because they want a clear answer on that.
But we also heard from people who potentially had left the Conservative Party, weren't voting for it because they were more tempted by other opposition parties. We also heard from a questioner who asked about her husband's business in the event of a no deal. And that's why I think Michael is absolutely right to say, yes, if we can leave by the 31st of October, that's all well and good. That's what he'd like to do. But if we're a couple of weeks or days away from getting the I's dotted and the T's crossed and the agreement across the line, then why would you not take that time to make sure that you had an orderly Brexit?
But what if we're not near a deal, and what if he does have to take us to a no-deal Brexit? There wasn't much clarification from anybody about what that means for people, or for that lady talking about her husband worried about his job.
Well, Michael, of course, having been DEFRA Secretary, Environment Secretary, has got one of the departments that is most exposed, most needs to prepare for a no-deal Brexit. And so he is absolutely committed and has done that, has overseen that work as Secretary of State. So he knows what a no-deal Brexit can mean. That's why he absolutely doesn't want it to happen. Of course, you can't compel two parties to agree. And the other thing that came out very strongly was that we need to deliver Brexit. People voted for this, and it's going to be very difficult to move on to the other issues, which again people rightly raised this evening, until we have delivered Brexit.
Okay, Nicky Morgan, thank you very much indeed. So that's the view there from Team Gove. Now, he added a few of those votes today. Not very many, though. They'll be a bit worried, I think, about whether there is momentum behind his campaign.
Sure, and some perhaps worried about Mr Hunt as well. I mean, he increased the number of MPs he had backing him, but only by a small amount too. Is there concern, perhaps, that the second place, everyone's assuming Boris Johnson will take first, the second place might be slipping?
Yeah, I mean, there is definitely the sense, of course, that Boris Johnson will make it through to the final two, and it is a matter, I would say, of the others scrapping to be in second place to go up against him. Now, as you say, Jeremy Hunt was a good second last time round, but again, I think there will be some people saying they would have expected him maybe to add more support to those people that he had previously. Some, his critics, saying that his campaign has been a little bit too lacklustre. I'm sure the person who's with me now will dispute that, Amber Rudd. What did you make of it? Do you think we got answers on Brexit? I mean, there was a lot of talk about the deadline of October the 31st, but not much detail about how we're going to leave if there is no deal that can go through Parliament.
Well, it was only an hour and there were a number of candidates, so getting that detail off them was hard. But I must say, I thought that Jeremy Hunt was the clear winner. I thought he got the right balance between facing up to the difficult task ahead and wanting to protect people's jobs. I mean, the question he asked Boris about the Shropshire farmer, that Boris was going to get his dream potentially of getting into number 10, but was he going to protect people's interests? I thought that was absolutely the core of what people are trying to consider when they deliver on Brexit.
But would Jeremy Hunt consider a no-deal Brexit?
Yes, I think he absolutely would.
That's not something you want,
It's
is
not
it?
something I want at all. I've been very frank about that. But I'm putting my trust in Jeremy because I believe he has the right experience, the right skills and the right commitment to be able to deliver on getting a deal. A lot of what we heard tonight was about different people's views to how they can be the one to negotiate an improvement with the European Union and be able to negotiate support in Parliament. Having the right attitude, the approach, and being being realistic about the challenge. Those are the things that Jeremy has, and I think we heard a lot of support from him tonight, for him tonight. You know, Oxford Man speaking up for the fact that Jeremy was the most compelling of them. I think that's what we got from the whole debate this evening.
Okay, Amber Rudd,
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. So, of course, don't forget, we're doing it all again tomorrow with round 3 of this leadership contest.
All right, Vicky, thank you. Vicky Young there. Well, one of the questions asked by a viewer tonight concerned the type of language used by politicians. Let's hear Boris Johnson's response.
I'm the Imam of a mosque, and I see firsthand the everyday impact of Islamophobic rhetoric on my community. Do the candidates agree that words have consequences?
Do the candidates agree that words have consequences? Boris Johnson, in the past you've said Muslim women who wear veils look like letterboxes and bank robbers. Do you accept your words have consequences? You've just heard that from an imam.
Of course, and insofar as my words have given offence over the last 20 or 30 years when I've been a journalist and people have taken those words out of my articles and escalated them, of course I'm sorry for the offence that they have caused. But I would just say this to our friend from Bristol, that when my Muslim great-grandfather came to this country in fear of his life in 1912, he did so because he knew it was a place that was a beacon of generosity and openness and a willingness to welcome people from around the world. And
what would he think of you using those words then about
the community? If I
am
Prime Minister, I will ensure that that is the way our country acts.
Concerns there from one of the questioners about the language politicians use. Well, to discuss that and so much more tonight with me for the next hour, our panel, Isabel Hardman, Assistant Editor at The Spectator, Faiza Shaheen, Director of the Centre for Labour and Social Studies and Labour Prospective Parliamentary Candidate for Chingford and Woodford Green, and the Conservative commentator, Tim Montgomery. It's great to see you all. Thanks for joining us. Right, Isabel, let's start. Give me a winner and give me why.
Oh goodness! I think the winner was those who sort of survived to the end of the programme. I have to say, because one of the problems was that so many candidates managed to get through this second round of voting. We have 5 men all trying to talk over each other and over Emily Maitlis, who did an amazing job in controlling them. But we didn't. I don't think we got very much clarity from them, particularly on Brexit, because it was a sort of. Well, it wasn't tennis because there were so many of them playing. They were all sort of batting answers and retorts between one another. I actually think the most interesting round was on tax and spending, where we did get some clarity from each of the candidates. But certainly on Brexit, I mean, at the end of those questions, I think both of the questioners went away completely befuddled by what they'd heard.
Sure, Faiz. I mean, Brexit is the dominant issue. Do you think, as Isabel suggests, that perhaps there was a lot of noise and not much clarity?
Yeah, I agree. I think when people were watching the other debate that was on Sunday, there was a winner around Rory Stewart. I think this time, actually, it's very hard to see who stood out. On Brexit, there was lots of whimsical answers, no depth. Actually, I don't think anyone had a good idea on how we take this forward, including Rory Stewart, which is his idea was to bring back Theresa May's deal, which is obviously been historically badly defeated many times now. And I just felt that people watching it wouldn't get any sense of assurance that these are the people, that any one of them, that can take us forward on the quagmire that is Brexit.
Is that the problem, Tim? That actually we're asking questions here and looking for answers where there aren't any answers, or it's difficult to get an answer?
Well, Rory Stewart, for example, was constantly saying to Boris Johnson and other people that were contemplating no deal, how are you going to get it? How are you going to get this through? Yeah. But the question could be put to him as well. He's sort of presenting himself as the reason Emily Maitlis did. Yeah. But he's basically saying he will somehow get Theresa May's withdrawal agreement through on a 4th time of asking. So there is fog surrounding each one of the candidates' plans. And unfortunately, I think partly because of the nature of the format, we didn't really get answered. I'd much rather see these candidates grilled by Andrew Neil or you, Clive, or someone for 30 minutes, and where they're actually pinned down on some of this substance, rather than 30, 40-second sound bites. I know we all like debates, they're great theatre, but actually as fora for really getting to understand where candidates stand, I think we've seen again tonight they're lacking in that clarity.
All right, well, I mean, I get the impression from all you do that Boris Johnson's fear that there might be cacophony was actually borne out tonight. It was his first debate. He missed the Channel 4 one, and he missed the Westminster hustings with journalists. Isabel, how did he do?
He did okay on most of the questions, in that he was taking the same approach he's taken to his whole campaign, which is sort of safety first, try to be quiet and reasonable the whole time, except for when he was asked about Islamophobia. I thought his answers on that and on the way he handled the Nazanin Zaghari Radcliffe case were really bad, actually. I'm surprised that he wasn't better prepared for them. He almost seemed nonplussed by them, and you'd think that given they are weaknesses that everyone highlights sort of on the hour about him. He started by talking about how people had taken his words from his columns and escalated them, and was trying to suggest that he'd offended people well while writing as a journalist. Well, actually, his comments about the burqa were made when he was a politician, and he could actually have defended his column, because in his column, as well as making those really horrible remarks about what women who wear burqas look like, he was actually trying to defend the concept of freedom as well, and he didn't do any of that then. And then he ended up rambling about how his great-grandfather would have been proud of him, which I don't think anyone apart from, well, possibly not even people in his family really care about.
But it is a sticky wicket for him, isn't it? And maybe it's difficult to defend those words, and maybe he's having that trouble himself.
Well, the truth is he's not playing to the crowd as in the general public or to me or you. He's playing to the Conservative membership. Now, we know the Conservative membership is hardline on Brexit generally, might not care as much about his Islamophobic comments. And, you know, it was difficult to hear him answer that and essentially say, well, I can't be Islamophobic because my great-granddad was Muslim. It just sounded a bit like that, which is a massive cop-out, and actually highlights again that Boris Johnson, who is the front runner and who lots of people in the membership say they want as the next Prime Minister, doesn't take Islamophobia and many other issues seriously. And at a time when this country is so divided, it's extremely concerning.
Tim, you know the Conservative Party very well. Is it fair to say that there are voters out there who will be making the final decision in a few weeks' time, for whom Boris Johnson's comments are okay?
I think some people will regard Boris Johnson's remarks as offensive. Some will regard them as okay. But we actually did have a little bit of news made in the debate tonight. There was a Muslim on the panel, Sajid Javid, certainly of Muslim background, and he got all the candidates to commit to an external examination of the Conservative Party's record on Islamophobia. That's not a bad thing. And if I can say a word for Sajid Javid, I thought he did well tonight. I thought he was very clear on Brexit. He talked about the importance of the Conservative Party committing to public services, and he got that remark in about Islamophobia as well. And I also thought he taught some of the other candidates a little bit about how this debate should be conducted. The Tory party has to emerge from this contest with its reputation enhanced, and I think there's a little bit too much blue on blue happening. And I think Sajid Javid was much better at making a positive case for his own candidacy rather than knocking the other candidates.
All right.
Boris overall, though, will be, I think, pleased with this. He needed to come without a knockout blow, and no one got close to a knockout blow against him. So as front runner, he's still got that status absolutely established.
Okay. All right, okay. We've talked about Boris. Let's talk about Rory Stewart, because he almost doubled the number of MPs that he got in the second round of voting Isabel. How well do you think he did?
Well, as we were saying, not as well as on Sunday night. He had obviously, and he'd billed this but before this debate, that he was going to go for Boris Johnson. And he did. And I think that made him come across as a bit more macho, to use the criticism that he'd actually used of the other candidates.
Which is not what he was
Sunday.
looking for, I suppose.
And none of us really knew where he was going when he took off his tie. That was where was this going to go by the end of the hour?
It was very early when he removed it and put it on the table. But yes, I think he obviously struck a stronger contrast with Boris Johnson than any of the other candidates, and does underline the criticism of Michael Gove, for instance, that letting Rory Stewart into the final two will polarise the Conservative Party. Some people might think that's a good thing, because it'll be a real battle of ideas rather than Boris Johnson knocking down someone who's sort of a bit Boris-light. But other people might say, well, Rory Stewart doesn't have a single Brexiteer backing him at the moment, so how on earth is he going to reunite the party, particularly after he's spent the next few weeks just laying into the person who is likely to become Prime Minister?
OK, well, we're going to hear from the three of you again in a few minutes' time, but we're going to go straight to our Chief Political Correspondent, Vicky Young, who's got some more guests. Vicky.
Yeah, that's right. Talk about Sajid Javid there. He, of course, snuck in by the skin of his teeth with 33 votes a little earlier this evening. Let's find out what his team think about the performance tonight. Victoria Atkins is with me now. He sounded to me like someone who was going for Dominic Raab's 30 votes, actually. He was talking about quite a hard Brexit. He was talking about other things which I think people might have felt, hang on a minute, that's not what we thought you were representing.
I think Saj wants to deliver Brexit and he wants to do so with a deal, that's absolutely clear, but also he's realistic that we should prepare for no deal. In terms of going for other people's votes, I think tonight has shown a win is a win, and it's all to play for now. Tomorrow, colleagues will be thinking about how the debate went and who did well, and I think the standout factor from this debate is that in a time where the country is disagreeing, there's a certain amount of anger, Saj cut through all that and got a bit of unity amongst the candidates on several occasions. We're just doing the count to find out how many times the other candidates said they agreed with Saj.
There was a question about tax cuts, actually, which is, as we know, traditionally something that Conservative Party members like the idea of. He actually talked much more about public services, didn't he? Now, that was interesting, and maybe it's not what Conservative Party members want.
Well, he's using his own experiences, both from his childhood. He made it clear, how his family and he relied on public services, the vital public services that we all care about so much. And his personal experience has shaped so much of his thinking, not just in the leadership campaign, but also in his work as Home Secretary. He's gone from a one-bed flat in Bristol to becoming Home Secretary in one of the highest offices of state, when frankly a lot of the odds were against him, and he's managed that. He's invested in policing in the year that he's already been Home Secretary, and I think this is great preparation for the moment he walks through number 10 and that door closes behind him.
Do you really think he can get to the last two even, given that he has just scraped in? Where is he going to get support from, do you think, in the next round?
I have enormous faith in my colleagues. I know how seriously they are taking this. They will look at the TV debate tonight. They'll reflect upon the policies that he's put forward. For example, he's looked with his city background, he's looked at the public finances and very much looked at the debt to GDP ratio and believes that we can secure some finances that way. And that's the sort of thing he's going to be doing to invest in our future once Brexit, the first phase of Brexit, is delivered. For example, I'm really excited about his infrastructure fund. I'm a Lincolnshire MP. There is a lot of broadband infrastructure that we would like, and I'm really looking forward to his plans on that huge £100 billion fund.
OK, Victoria Atkins, thank you very much indeed. And of course, tomorrow, well, they haven't got long actually to try and get more votes together, because the second round of voting, of course, begins and starts tomorrow afternoon.
All right, Vicky, thanks. Vicky Young there. Well, it's Conservative Party members who will make the final decision on the winner and next Prime Minister, after the candidates are whittled down to just two by the end of this week. And the candidates will all spend the next few weeks travelling up and down the country to local party hustings. Let's join my colleague Anita McVeigh at the Sale Conservative Club in Greater Manchester. Hi there.
Hi Clive, thank you very much. Good evening, yes, again from Sale Conservative Club. A bit of watching them, watching us going on. Very interesting to watch the grassroots members here who ultimately decide who will be the next Conservative leader and Prime Minister as they watch that debate. But let's hear what they thought. Did it change any minds? Gentlemen, we've heard from you earlier in the day. A very quick reaction, who you thought did best in that debate tonight?
So earlier I was undecided. Now my shortlist is down to three, between Jeremy Hunt, Sajid Javid and Michael Gove. I felt Boris Johnson was held back his views, and it didn't really provide clarity for me.
So still a bit of decision-making for you?
Yes.
Anyone but Rory. Good stable of candidates, really pleased. Happy. I'll choose one, but I'm happy with any one of those.
OK.
Between me, it's Boris and Saj.
OK.
On tonight's performance is Gove. Very impressive. Statesmanship's performance, actually.
Interesting. Quite a range of views then. Let's head over here and get a little bit more detailed reaction. I've got here with me the president of Sale Conservative Club. That's Janet, who is the steward here at the club, disappearing. She doesn't want to be interviewed again. So Beryl, you're president at Sale Conservative Club. You've been a member for 24 years. And Laura Evans, we heard from you earlier as well, Laura. So beginning with you, What did you think of the debate? Who impressed you most?
Well, I had to write it down. At first I didn't like the opening. I thought it was a little bit too argumentative. But then when it settled down, I really felt we had a really good team of people there. I have to say I didn't find Rory particularly appealing at all. He almost looked disengaged half the time, so he didn't really do it for me. But on the other fronts, I thought Jeremy Hunt did a great job. I thought Boris underplayed his cards, and probably we'll hear from him next time. Sajid was great. Gove was good. So very happy with them.
You said that originally Jeremy Hunt hadn't been on your radar at all. So did he impress you most?
Yes, I think Jeremy Hunt came out really, really well. I was pleasantly surprised. Interestingly enough, when I'd been interviewed before, people said, well, you must have a choice, you must have somebody in mind. And I really had tried to keep an open mind. And I think that what was shown tonight, though I thought the questions were a little bit too constructed, but I thought that it was a good debate.
Enough to make you vote for Jeremy Hunt if he's in the final two?
Enough to make me want to watch it again to see.
OK, Beryl.
Yes,
same question. What did you think?
Same as my friend here. I think Jeremy Hunt came over the best. I was disappointed in Boris Johnson. I didn't feel he was powerful enough at all tonight. One of the things I was disappointed in as well was the elderly were never discussed. It never came up at all. I think of all the questions, nobody ever asked questions about the elderly and care for the elderly, which is something which I, feel quite passionate about. So I think there were issues that they could have discussed and they didn't. So I've got an open mind as well. Nobody made me...
You haven't made up your mind yet
no,
who you're going to vote for.
Definitely not.
And this idea that, according to latest polling, that Boris Johnson is way ahead amongst Conservative grassroots members. What do you say to that?
Well, I have to say I'm not Boris's greatest fan. I was Theresa May's greatest fan, and I felt that they stabbed her in the back, and now he's trying to move the goalposts. He's saying one thing and possibly meaning another. The same with some of the other candidates there who were saying they wanted to move the goalposts instead of October the 31st, having some extra time. We've messed up. We can't have any more extra time. We've got to sort this out.
But Boris isn't your darling, not based on tonight?
Not at the moment, no.
Let's talk a little bit more about the detail of what was discussed. I think one of the most heated round of answers was in relation to the backstop. Did you feel that anyone there, Laura, acquitted themselves particularly well in answering the question?
No, but they made it clear that it is going to be a problem. It's still a problem, it was a problem, and it will be a problem. So we need to really get some more fundamental facts about how we are going to deal with that, how we're going to get that through the government, how it's going to be resolved. So I think they're going to have to be a little more clear in their clarity on that matter.
Other questions were lifting the tax burden for workers, how are you going to deliver no deal against the consent of Parliament, just leafing through my notes, whether which one of them, or whether they thought it was desirable to get the UK out of the EU on the 31st or by the 31st of October. Beryl, do you feel that you got the sort of detail that you were looking for? Because chatting to people here in the club earlier, pretty much everyone was saying to me, we just actually need more detail from the remaining candidates.
Yes, I definitely need. What concerns me very much is the fact that all the what Theresa May was suggesting all was not back. What are they going to do that's going to be any different to what she has suggested? Don't seem to be making any progress at all, and it does concern me as a member of the public. We're just not making any progress. Everybody you talk to is fed up, totally and utterly fed up with it.
Beryl.
We've become a joke. We have friends in Germany. I have friends in Germany, and they can't believe what's going on. And
Beryl, Laura.
It is just as it is at the moment.
All right, well, let's see which one of these candidates emerges, which two emerge into the very final round that you will be voting on. Beryl and Laura, thank you very much for your views on tonight. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see whether the political realities for whoever becomes Prime Minister matches what they're saying in these debates. Back to you, Clive.
Anita, thank you. Anita McVeigh there. in Sale. Well, the winner will be announced by the end of July, and with me are two people who've worked for Theresa May. Katie Perrier is the former Director of Communications at Number 10, and Chris Wilkins is a former Head of Strategy at Downing Street. It's good to see you both. Thanks for being with us. We just heard those Conservative Party members there seem to be giving the nod to Mr Hunt and Mr Gove as the winners tonight. Would you agree with that?
I don't think there are any particular winners tonight. In fact, watching this in the studio, I'm surprised Clive didn't supply me with booze, because it would have been a lot more enjoyable.
There's vodka in there.
It was incredibly depressing, actually. I thought the only winner tonight was probably Jeremy Corbyn, sitting back and pouring himself a nice drink, because watching this all unfold, I don't think that sect did them any good, really. I don't think the format worked for anybody. Too many candidates. It's very noisy, all talking over each other a lot of the times. I don't think it displayed the Conservative Party in its best light. Yeah. In fact, I'm not sure there are any new votes won tonight. Right. But I felt that Gove and Sajid Javid and Jeremy Hunt could have had a bit of a free run in some ways, because people were either laying into Boris or laying into Rory. Stewart, yeah. And polar opposites. Yeah. I think those that come through in the middle probably got their answers across the best.
Was that part of the problem, the cacophony, potentially, that Boris Johnson suggested might be the case if you have too many people on stage?
Yeah, I think he was proven right in that sense, wasn't he? It was difficult at times to hear what was going on. It was difficult to hear some of the answers, and I mean, Maitlis did a good job of trying to keep it under control. But people clearly came in with game plans to this, and one of the, I think, most obvious game plans was to really target Rory Stewart tonight. I don't think he had a great evening. The format didn't work terribly well for him, and it was clear that the other candidates have been rattled by his momentum, because they really did go after him. And as Katie says, they also sort of turned their fire on Boris Johnson a little bit, and the other three were sort of given not so much a sort of free rein, but actually nobody really targeted them for their answers. So, ultimately, I think it probably, Boris was proven right in terms of the format, but it probably worked for him, because nobody really held him to account.
Indeed, Katie. There is a problem, though, for the leading four candidates, if we leave Rory Stewart out of it for the moment, in that they still cannot explain how they're going to get the key to get through that door that is Parliament, to get a no deal if that ends up being what we have to do.
Indeed, and Rory Stewart is the one that's trying to say, I'm being honest with voters at home in saying that we don't think we can get much more out of the European partners than what we've got right now, and so how do we work with that? And other candidates are saying, no, there's a fresh look at this, we want to go back and in some ways start again, or there's lots of answers around Northern Ireland. I felt Michael Gove was very good on Northern Ireland in his particular answers, that he really showed that he understood Northern Ireland, said he worked there before, and talked about lots of politicians that he talks to on a regular basis. So lots of answers around Brexit, but no real clarity as to how everybody will tackle it in order to get us past that October 31st deadline. And indeed, people were being asked to volunteer to guarantee that deadline, and not everybody was quick to rush to put their hand up.
Indeed. We have another round of voting tomorrow. Rory Stewart almost doubled the number of MPs that he managed to get, Chris, in the second round of voting. Does it feel to you after tonight that he's probably hit the buffers now?
I think his momentum stalled slightly this evening, yes. I think he was quite effectively taken down by the other candidates. So if there was a loser tonight, it was possibly Rory, I think. I think the other danger for him tomorrow, as was the case before the debate, was that there was a possibility of other candidates, mainly Boris Johnson, lending votes to Sajid Javid to knock Rory out. And I thought Sajid had a good night. I thought he made a very effective application for the keys to number 11 this evening. That's really what you saw. You saw a lot of Boris. I agree with Sajid agreeing with Boris. Sajid was clearly, I think, this evening saying, I want to be your Chancellor, Boris. I think he did a good job of that, and that makes it more likely that tomorrow votes might be lent to him, because they're still ultimately worried about Rory going through, so that I think tactical voting will knock him out.
All right, OK. Chris Wilkins, Katie Perry, it's good to have your perspective. Thanks for joining us. Thank you. Now, let's go back to our chief political correspondent, Vicky Young, who's in another part of the BBC, and she's got some guests for us.
Yeah, of course, everyone was very keen to hear from Boris Johnson. He didn't take part in that Channel 4 debate earlier this week. He has, of course, done hustings with MPs, a lot of them behind the scenes, but this was his moment to explain some of his policies. Matt Hancock, the Health Secretary, who is supporting Boris Johnson, is with me now. There were a lot of questions about Brexit, as you would expect. There was a lot of talk about the deadline of October the 31st. It seemed that is a clear deadline for Boris Johnson. But the type of Brexit, he still talks about nobody wanting a disorderly no deal. Is he talking about a managed no deal? Because that still is unclear.
Of course, nobody wants a disorderly no deal, but the best way to deliver Brexit is with a deal by the 31st of October. I think Boris Johnson is best placed to deliver that, and that is one of the reasons that I'm backing him. But he was also absolutely clear that we need to deliver Brexit on the 31st of October.
But is he talking about something completely different to the withdrawal agreement?
Well, in order to get a deal, clearly we're going to have a different deal to the one that Theresa May proposed, because that has failed in Parliament several times. And I've made the case repeatedly for that in the past, and that is what we need to do. We need to have a different deal that Parliament can support, that allows us then to get into a free trading relationship, both with our European neighbours and also around the world. That is the goal, and I thought Boris was crystal clear about the need to deliver Brexit tonight.
And how does he think he can achieve that, given that Theresa May wasn't able to do that?
Well, by changing the deal. I mean, that's absolutely...
Changing the backstop, presumably?
Well, we absolutely need to have a negotiation with the European Union on changing the deal that has failed several times. And I strongly agree with Boris on that. And I think he has the ability to unite the Conservative Party. And I think, we saw tonight that unity is needed in the Conservative Party. Boris has brought together MPs from right across the party. Damien Green and Rob Buckland, typically seen as on the pro-European end of the party, Jacob Rees-Mogg and Marc-Francois at the other end.
That's because they think they can influence him, don't they? And not all of them are going to be able to.
No, it's because he is a unifier. He brings people together. His personality helps bring people together, and that is important in a leader, it's important in a Prime Minister, and it's one of the reasons that I'm backing Boris Johnson, because he has the best, he will be the best, he is the best at unifying the Conservative Party, which we absolutely need to do.
I mean, some people think he is a divisive character. He had a difficult question about his comments about women wearing veils, Muslim women wearing veils, saying they look like letterboxes. I mean, his answer to that seemed to be, I had a distant relative who was a Muslim, therefore it was fine for me to say that. I mean, that wasn't a great answer.
No, he apologised for any offence that was caused, and I'm not going to condone some of the flowery language that Boris has used in the past.
Some would say it's offensive, not flowery.
Well, and where offence was caused, then he's apologised for that. But crucially, I thought there was a really electric moment, actually, when he talked about his great-grandfather, when he talked about his Muslim immigrant, his great-grandfather, who then came here to this country as a refugee and made a life for himself. I thought that was a real standout moment of the evening, actually. And I think that what matters is having somebody who can bring the Conservative Party together, who can deliver Brexit, and then help this country move forward with optimism and enthusiasm. I thought the other moments, when he's talking about the living wage and what he did in London as mayor on the living wage, about the focus on education, I think these are really important areas that we've got to deliver Brexit so we can get on to delivering things like that.
OK, Matt Hancock, thank you very much indeed. So that's the view there from Team Boris Johnson. Of course, he is way out in front when it comes to endorsements from MPs.
Yeah, Matt Hancock seeming pretty happy there with his man's performance. But what about the backers of Rory Stewart tonight? How do you think they're feeling?
Well, they were absolutely delighted when the result came through, obviously, because he had gained more votes than anybody else, and there had been speculation that he wasn't going to get close to that magic number of 33. He did way better than that. Let's speak to David Cork, who is supporting Rory Stewart. Have we had peak Rory, do you think?
Oh, no, I don't think so. I think it's only just started. It's a really good result.
Where's he going to get more support from, though?
Well, look, I think what we've seen is that he's winning support from lots of other candidates, and I'm sure he has picked up support from Jeremy Hunt's campaign, from Michael Gove's campaign. I think that people are seeing that Rory is a serious candidate, and that's what today has demonstrated. And the fact that he's gone from being last, if you like, he's overtaken two other candidates. He's got 2 places to go up, and he's into the final round. So I think, look, he is a strong, credible, serious candidate, and I think there are more and more members of Parliament that are looking at Rory and saying, actually, he is the person that we want to put put through in the final round. The best person to take on Boris Johnson.
But he's not a unifier in the sense that his support is all coming from one wing of the party, isn't it, when it comes to Brexit?
Well, look, he's someone who wants to deliver Brexit. He's committed to delivering Brexit, and he's got a more credible plan than I think his opponents in terms of delivering Brexit.
It seems to be Theresa May's plan, which didn't
Well,
work.
look, the idea that we can go to the European Union and somehow, because someone else asks, that there's a new Prime Minister, a new face on the other side of the table, we're suddenly going to get a different deal. There's no reason why we should believe that. And the idea that the threat of no deal is credible when Parliament won't support that. So the idea that, we heard from some of the candidates that we should leave at the end of October. Nobody explained how. I mean, it was one of the frustrations of the debate, as Rory kept pressing them. The question, the members of the public were pressing candidates. Emily Maitlis was pressing candidates, but none of them could explain how they would leave on the 31st of October. And so in terms of, we have a deal that has been agreed with the European Union. We've got to be better at communicating that with both our own colleagues and those on the other side of the House. And since we last voted on that, we've had the European parliamentary elections, which has demonstrated the frustration and anger that is out there about not having resolved this matter. So I think that's got to be the next way forward, and Rory Stewart is the only one who is making that case instead of making undeliverable promises about getting a new deal or about delivering no deal.
OK, David Gauke, thank you very much indeed. So Rory Stewart's role in all of this really has to be to been telling them some home truths. Now the question is whether Tory MPs want to hear them or not.
All right, we'll find out. Vicky, thank you. Vicky Young there.